Welcome back to the In Chamber. I'm your host, Tom Schumann. A few simple questions to open today's conversation. Does your organization need workers? If not today, how about a few years from now when the baby boomer exodus hits its peak? The next question, what are you doing about it beyond traditional recruiting efforts? That's our focus today. We have two guests with us who have been taking steps that quite honestly aren't always seen in their industries. Holly Ward, Education and Public Outreach Coordinator for Irving Materials, Inc., and Jesse Johnson, owner of Metal Supermarkets in Indianapolis. Both of you, welcome to the In Chamber.
Thank you.
Tom. All right, Holly, we'll start with you. Tell us, give the listeners a little bit of background about IMI, its work, and the challenge, if that's the right word, about attracting new workers to the industry.
Absolutely. So IMI, we're in construction trades. So we do everywhere that you see concrete, everywhere you see pavement, a building, everything like that. We extract the rocks from the earth. And so it's not an attractive industry. And so we've had to try to make it more attractive for people to want to come in because it's a dirty job. I mean, it's dirty, and we have had a bad rap, not just here locally, but nationally in the mining industry of making that everything dirty, and we're hurting the environment. And when we blow stuff up, we mess up the roads and all that. But the thing that we're trying to get accomplished is to get that warm and fuzzy back for us to have those workers. I mean, we have people that go off, the service people that come back. They go to Afghanistan, they go to Iran, they come back and they're like, wow, we are so fortunate to live in the great state or great country of America. Because we have our infrastructure. If we didn't have our community, in our infrastructure, we would not be able to have all of these things that we do.
And Holly, you've been in this industry for a long time, correct?
28 years. I began 28 years ago as a sales rep for a small family-owned business in Miami County and Marshall County. And with that, we had developed a program that we had children that came for field trips with schools and whatnot. But then IMI, we had an acquisition that happened in 2012, and they purchased us, which was kind of fun because IMI was my biggest customer in my area. So I already knew everyone. And they didn't have anybody that did a community outreach as large as IMI is, because we're in 5 states. And so it just kind of evolved toward the last 8 years. That's all I've been doing is going into the classroom, setting up, going to STEM events, partnering with Ivy Tech and career centers and things like that.
Well, we'll get into that a little bit more
Sure.
about your current role. Jesse, tell the listeners about Metal Supermarkets, what you do and what you see when it comes to welding and career opportunities there.
Sure. So what we do at Metal Supermarkets is a little different than your standard large box store. We sell things cut to size. We have no minimums. We're a lot more nimble and dynamic than what a lot of other metal vendors are. That leads us to our work with schools and trades. We make it very easy for them to purchase. We know that there are a lot of constraints and a lot of hiccups, and purchasing with schools can be a little more of a challenge sometimes. With lead time for school board approval, things like that really kind of alter how they approach the metal industry, and it makes it difficult for them. So we kind of step in, fill that void, and really kind of try to run with the torch, from giving them pretty hefty discounts to donations, to also speaking with kids. We have an open door policy if teachers want to bring kids in for small tours or kind of a learning events. We try to be as open and receptive as we possibly can in any way, shape, or form.
Well, let's talk about speaking with students. And again, for both of you, Holly, you mentioned before we started, you're doing this 4 or 5 days a week, sometimes even more on weekends. And Jesse, I know before we got started, you mentioned the same thing. Holly, talk about that work you're doing in the schools, the message that you're getting out, and how that works.
Oh, it is wonderful. When you go into a classroom, I'm known as the rock lady. When I come up, because I go to the same schools a lot, throughout the years, and I show up and they're like, oh, there's the rock lady.
Well, there's a worse nickname you could have. I think
Yes,
that's good.
Yes, it could be worse. And it's so fun, the warm and fuzzy that you get from the children, but also from the adults. Because I like to think of it as a varsity football team, basketball team, volleyball team. You are in charge of not just these high school kids, you're building a program. So that's why we like to start down at the elementary level, and we're trying to get them, they learn about rocks and minerals in the 3rd and 4th grade, and we're trying to get them to understand it's not just rock, picking up a rock, and it's because it's shiny or it's rough, and you stick it in your pocket and it goes through the washing machine, and mom's mad, or the kids put them in their mouth. We're trying to educate them on all the uses of rocks and minerals. And so you get them when they're young, and we are starting now to notice that these
Very
people
cool.
are coming back now. We have those same children that are coming in and doing internships with us, and
That's
then we
awesome.
are hiring some of them. So it is starting to make its way.
And you mentioned third, fourth grade, that they're already part of their curriculum is studying, I assume, geology and some things like that. So you're kind of playing in with what teachers are already doing. Is that
Exactly, because when IMI purchased the in the acquisition in 2012, we had field trips there, but a lot of schools aren't allowing field trips anymore unless it met state standards. Plus, they have to come up with the funding. We do not charge for field trips, and so IMI saw this other part that we could do. We could go take the quarry to them. We could take the aggregates to them, and educate them that way. So it kind of helped when my sister and my brother-in-law were teachers. They helped me, develop this program that met the standards, and now I have all these teachers that it has blown up. They're like a little cult. They find something that
That's
it's
great.
free and it's educational and it meets their standards, and you help them, because the kids do not want to sit there and listen to the same teacher every day for 9 months or whatever that might be. When you have somebody else that comes in that's exciting and brings more enthusiasm of something else, they get it more.
Yeah.
They get more out of that.
well, you both bring the enthusiasm. I can see that after short conversations. Jesse, talk about your interactions, obviously in the welding with the students. You're talking a little bit older, little high schools, career centers, I assume for the most part.
Yep.
But talk about those experiences.
I wish I could be in the schools 4 to 5 days a week, because it is honest to God, my favorite thing that I do. To watch them light up, to be honest, at first they're, who's this guy at the front of the class? And then you kind of intrigue them with a few bits of information that they can then run with. And it's a very welcoming experience. You feel that they're very grateful to have you there at the end. But I try to go in, I try to talk to kids about alternate opportunities. Just because you maybe have a 4.0 or a 2.2 GPA, you can still look at trades as a viable option as opposed to going to college. Trades, typically are going to give you a paid apprenticeship and pretty much go right into the working field with no debt and a great long-term career. These aren't jobs. They are most definitely careers, and I try to stress that to the kids. But they're very receptive. I think the kids have learned, and they've seen their older brothers and sisters or their cousins or their aunts and uncles still struggling with college debt 20 years after they've left, 10 years after they've left. And it scares these kids. And that's what they hear constantly. And to show them another approach, they kind of light up and realize, well, that is a respectable job. And welding and machining and being an engineer, those are good skills to know. And they carry through to the rest of their life, where you have a stable form of employment your entire career. And with the exodus that we're going to see in the next 10 years of certified welders and machinists, there's going to be a lot more job openings. And I try to tell the kids, the ball's going to be in your court. As an employer, as someone who hires people, the ball's usually on my side of the desk. If you're going after a welder or a machinist, the ball is most definitely in the prospect's court.
It's become a whole new ball game in that
Yes.
sense, hasn't it? Those individuals have much more power, control, whatever
Very
the
much
right
so.
term is,
Very much
around their
so.
working arrangements. Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about that challenge. We probably didn't get into that enough at the beginning. What you're seeing in the industries, how severe is this shortage? What are you looking at of potential job openings, down the road in the industries?
Oh, we are always at career fairs. We are always putting our name out there to, I can't remember what the trucking company was that just a couple months ago here.
Celadon?
Exactly. We were there trying to get those drivers. Here we have jobs, we have openings, and come work for us. But a lot of them, it was hard for them to understand, because a lot of them were long ways. We're right here. And IMI has such a great tool, because we can ship you to all these different areas. We have the aggregates, we have the concrete, we have the
cool.
paving. So it opens up so many other doors, for people. And you talked about the education. It was really hard for me the first time I was asked by a teacher, because they talk about careers in the 3rd and 4th grade, and a lot of teachers, that's one of the things they want me to highlight. And the first time I had to say it off of my tongue, that college is not always for everyone. And then you have all these little children, not just boys, girls. That's another thing that I would love to talk about too here later on, about the girls that are coming into our industries. It used to be just a man's world.
Tom and I talked about the same thing with welding.
Yeah.
Every time I go to the schools, there are more and more high school girls, and they're usually the younger side, freshmen, sophomores, that are getting into it. It's awesome to see.
Yeah, it
It's
is.
awesome to
It
see.
is. And I'm not one of those that, a woman can do anything a man can do kind of thing. I still like chivalry. I still like to be
Sure.
treated that way, okay? However, there's plenty of opportunity out there that women are now. When I first started 28 years ago, I was the only female sales rep in Indiana, aggregate world. The females were the QC people, the secretaries. You had a few that might have been in management, but now that's everywhere.
Yes.
It's everywhere. And so I'm glad to hear that with you as well.
It is, and not only that, anymore, I would say well over 50% of the vendors that I utilize, which are well over 80 different vendors for different materials that we purchase and sell, most of my contacts at large steel companies, aluminum companies, are women. And women excel in the metal industry in all shapes and forms, from welding to sales to management even. I've got a couple girls that work for me, and they do a phenomenal job. My sales gal, Beth, at the East Side store, she's my leading salesperson at the entire network of everybody I own. And she's been in the industry long before I was in the industry. She's got almost 20 years experience. So women do find a very, very successful niche in our world as well. And the welding comes right back to finesse. I find it very entertaining that a female with no experience and a male with no experience, I'm going to bet money every time that the female's naturally better at the welding technique right off the bat with no experience, never picking up a torch, she will do better than the guy. And it's pretty amazing to see.
Is that the attribute part of that? Is it the maturity levels, or is it the hand-eye coordination? Any thoughts on why that's the case?
I think it's a little bit of everything. I think it's the girls wanting to show up the boys.
Yes.
I think that's a major source of drive. I hear the comment, "Watch this weld," all the time when I'm in the classes. And naturally, I think they have a steadier hand as well. Just physiologically,
Sure.
I think that it does give them a slight advantage. But I think a lot of it is the chip on their shoulder, getting told they can't do this. This is I think a lot of it is the chip on their shoulder, and it's awesome. I'm down the road. That chip's not going to be there because it's going to be more of a customary to have women in the industry. But for now, it's a great motivator for them to get told this is a man's world. It's not at all, and to watch them figure it out and then just run with it is really cool.
So what's the biggest obstacle that each of you run into if you're having these conversations in schools? And I understand most people very enthusiastic, and I want to get some specific positive reactions, but what might be the obstacle or anything that you have to overcome to convince students, teachers, parents, whoever, about the great opportunities in these careers?
The parents. It's
Yes.
the parents, honestly.
100%, it's the parents.
Yeah, they are. Oh no, because it would look so bad on them if Johnny did not go to and get his bachelor degree. I
Yep.
have 3 grown daughters. I have 2 that have their masters, one that's going on for her doctorate, and the other one is tottering into maybe going to get her master's. College is wonderful. I think it's great, but like you said, the debt you have earlier.
Yes.
And are they happy in their jobs? Because we actually have people that come to work for us now that have already had a career somewhere.
Yes.
And still have that debt like you spoke about earlier, but they want to come in and do something that they can actually see, and they feel empowered, and I can do something with my hands, and I'm appreciated a lot more than
Yeah.
just sitting around behind a desk and doing I don't even know what.
Or
I'm
even
doing.
second career?
Yes,
People
yes.
looking at a second
Yes.
career?
Yes.
The paycheck's great, but the ability to physically create something with your hands is gratifying in its own right. I drive around the city from the Indianapolis Stadium, Stadium, Victory Field to all the other places that I have metal at. No one will ever know. No one will ever have any idea that I did the beer carts at Victory Field. But when I go to the ball game,
Well-
I know that I did the beer carts.
Well, we know now.
Yeah,
You
we
know
do.
now.
I
And
love
everybody
it now.
listening knows now.
But it's
so.
all the little places that we've had our hand in. It's gratifying, and I think when people realize that, and I've worked multiple manual labor jobs, and when I would mow grass, I didn't get paid that day, but when I drove home, I drove by that manicured median that I had mowed and planted flowers in. It was gratifying. I'm not going to go around to a bunch of blue-collar guys and say, man, those flowers look
Yeah,
great. I'm
yeah.
really glad I planted them. But I myself know driving home that, I had a direct impact on my community today. And it's a very, very rewarding feeling that no money in the world would ever make you feel more or less that feeling. But it is very gratifying, and I think people that have sat behind a computer for so long maybe do want to. It's the office space.
Yes.
You
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
you go from punching
Yes.
a keyboard to demolition because it is more gratifying. You enjoy the job more, and I do see a lot of people that do make a transition, you know, maybe not in their 40s or 50s, but in their early 30s, that kind of rethink what they're doing, and they look back and say, man, I really wish I would have ran with that welding thing. And I see it a lot from walk-in customers who are accountants or lawyers, or, you know, they work wherever they may work.
Doing some projects on the side.
It's amazing how many suit and ties come in and get dirty pieces of steel on a
Yes.
Friday to weld up and have fun over the weekend. It's really cool.
Yeah.
But we mentioned challenges. Same thing, Jesse. You were nodding
Parents.
your head when Holly talked about parents.
Parents, when you talk to kids, you know, I had one kid in I believe it was Hamilton Southeastern, who said, you know, his dad was a doctor, I believe. His mom did something in the medical field. I don't think she was a medical doctor though. But I asked him, what are your plans after school? And his response was, I would love to weld. I would love to be a welder, to be a certified welder, to really get a lot of accreditations and be able to do about anything. I like working with my hands. And I said, well, that's great. Where are you going to go to technical school at? And he said, I'm not. They want me to go to a 4-year college, and they don't really see validity in what I'm doing, but it's what makes me happy. So then I asked him, so what are you doing? He said, well, they think I'm going to go to IUPUI. And I said, what are you doing? He goes, I'm starting at Lincoln Tech in 4 months. So he was, kudos to him. You know, he's
Yes.
doing what he wants. His parents might have liked a tip-off call from me on that one, but I didn't do anything. It was really cool to see that, you know, his drive was so strong that he was, I'm not going to say disobeying his parents, because I'm sure his parents just want him to be happy.
Sure.
But nonetheless, that is the attitude, is that college is almost mandatory, and it's not. There's a lot of really positive things that have occurred. You know, look at how many billionaires have dropped out of college. Look at how many happy people never even stepped foot on a campus.
Yes.
You know, you don't have to have a piece of paper on the wall and have a smile on your face at what you do.
Well, and as Holly, as you said, it's just finding the right fit for that individual student. Obviously, there's tremendous success in the college route for certain people,
Of course.
but others who have the opportunity for vocational or technical or trade. That's a great opportunity for them too. So again, you've talked kind of some of the things you hear in the classroom. Any individual stories, anecdotal things of just things that have left you going home with just a huge smile on your face at the end of the day when you've heard a student say something, or a teacher that just made everything all worthwhile that day.
Well, I have saved every thank you letter, email that I've ever received from students, parents, grandparents, teachers, administrators. I have totes and totes and totes. And I remember I was down at a restaurant somewhere down here in Indianapolis. I cannot remember where. I was setting up for an event. And I'm always tattooed with all my IMI stuff, you know, every time I go to lunch. And I went in there between my classes, and this nice young lady, she was probably late 30s, early 40s. She was my waitress. And she's talking to me, and she keeps looking down at my shirt, and I get ready to pay my bill and leave, and she comes back over and she goes, oh, she said, my daughter, I think her daughter's name was Emily. She said, there was a girl that was just at her school, and she named what the school was, and she said, my daughter came home with her, because we give them all of these rock collections. They get 10 rocks, and then they get to learn how to make concrete with that fossils on them.
Cool.
It's so awesome. Come to the Indianapolis Indians thing on the 11th,
I'll do it.
April 11th, okay?
I'll do it.
It's a STEM event. And she told me how this woman had empowered her daughter, that she loved rocks, she wanted to be a geologist, but that would be considered a nerd, and everybody would make fun of her. And they could not believe when this woman walked in with her hard hat on, her safety vest, her steel-toed boots, because
That would have been you.
that was me.
I thought so.
And I'm sitting there listening to her, and I'm like, oh, and I pulled my card out, and I said, well, you can tell her that you got to meet the rock lady today. And she goes, what? And I said, that's what the kids call me. And I said, I was the one that was at her school. And so we had a nice conversation. So that made me feel good. But I leave, every school I leave, I go home with those types of feelings. I mean, it is that wonderful. I love my job.
Yeah. I found that the timid kids, and one of the things that's a direct thing I see is, you know, I drop off donations a lot, and the intention is to help the school, you know, and kids will always ask, well, we only use sheet metal. Why'd you bring tubing and angle? I said, do you have a project at home you want to do? And they light up and they say, It's usually not that day. It's a couple weeks later, they'll send me their little brother's go-kart they fix in a picture, or just a thank you card saying, I appreciate it. I got to go home and practice on something different. And the direct thank yous are very cool. The teachers are just so appreciative sometimes that we're able to come and kind of pick up where the school board or the budget left off, and kind of help them with things that are needed. And it makes you feel good when a teacher literally grabs you on the shoulder and says, thank you. I greatly appreciate this. And you can tell the sincerity in their voice, because just having a couple pieces of what I consider scrap and offcuts mean the world to them. And you see it. You see them light up. They're so appreciative of not only the material and talking to the kids, but just the fact that someone supports them. Sure. And it's really cool to see just the sincere thank yous that you get back from doing what we do.
Well, the two of you obviously doing your part in schools, talking with students, doing what you can. What do you see beyond that could be done to encourage more people? Things that businesses should be doing, or suggestions that others might do to kind of get that outreach going?
I would say do a lot of the things that we're doing, but you have to, like I referred to earlier, you have to start down here. You have to start here and start educating people.
The younger ages.
You do, because it's really hard to change the mindset of the older people. And we have those types of people that it's funny when I go into a classroom and I'll have this little guy over here that you can tell his parents have a lot of money and a lot of influence. And why are you blowing up our ground? Why are you hurting our environment? I mean, that's the first things I get from him. Well, that's my quest. Okay, I'm changing that little guy's mind by the time I leave this classroom in the 2 hours I have with him.
I got a sense you're pretty successful.
Oh, I am every time, because it's the best thing in the world when the teacher and I make eye contact, and she's like, "Oh, good luck with that one." I'm like, "You wait." And then by the end, he's just like loving. Like we used to give out halite, which is salt. And that was one of the rocks, and so I'd make the kids lick the salt rock. Well, that was the funniest thing in the world, watching them. It's like, taking a lemon and sticking it in their mouth. And so by the time I give them, they make their concrete, they show all the stuff, how we blow the rocks up, and they get their rock kit. That little guy is like, I said, so what do you think about our industry now? You can go home and talk to mom and dad how we're not hurting the environment? Are you going to help with that?
Yeah.
Because we are environmentally friendly, even though people think that we aren't.
Yeah.
So.
And plus, it's explosives and big trucks.
I know. Who doesn't like that?
You can't get much cooler than that, huh?
Yeah. I would agree. I think that the earlier we can start the approach and to get people in there, it's the short comments over the course of 12 years while these kids are in school about college. It's never options after school is what needs to be discussed. And I think that by the time they get older, that is a lot of the stress that a lot of these teachers and educators are finding is you're not educating someone, you're converting their idea of the future. And it's not easy to do because everywhere they turn, it's college this, college that, and they're coming around. It is coming around, but my fear is it's not going to be fast enough.
No.
And I know it's not going to be fast enough. But that's I think that the earlier you can get them, the better. I agree.
It's changing. It's actually, some places are changing with it has to help with the counselors at the school systems, and the school systems that are bringing back in all of those particular classes are helping with that. I mean, they're trying, but not all the schools have jumped on board.
Yeah, and it's our responsibility. I think when I mentioned to Tom before we started this, I view it as I am in the metal industry, therefore it is my responsibility to do whatever I can to make a stronger metal industry, whether it's through education, whether it's through donations, whether it's hiring more people in the industry. I mean, anything I can do, it is our responsibility, and I think we need larger companies to take that approach. If you're a large company and you have a welder in your shop, it's your responsibility to make sure there's welders in the future, or else your weld station is going to run empty. It's going to run dry. And I'm a fairly small business. I might have 2 locations and about 10 employees, but we're not a massive corporation. So we take every step we can. But I think I hate to say it, but the biggest advocate for this is Mike Rowe, and Mike Rowe has done a great job of changing a lot of people's perception of trades and skilled trades. And it's. You almost need a mascot. You almost need a rallying cry to really try to draw up energy. And, I feel sometimes shortchanged because I can't drum up as much as I'd like to. And I would like to see a lot of bigger companies kind of step in and follow Holly and I's lead in reaching out to grow their industry. And I think in turn, until they start to realize that, it is part of their job to help replace, replenish, and grow, that it's going to get difficult. Eventually they're going to learn, but they're going to learn the hard way.
Well, and I think we've seen at the chamber here that increase over the years, partially out of crisis.
Yes.
Can't find the people we need. At first it was complaining about the talent that was coming out of the schools, before finally that realization that companies have to be part of the solution.
Yes.
But you mentioned, Jesse, that you think it might not be coming fast enough.
I don't.
It still looks like a difficult track with whether look at the demographics, the baby boomers, whatever.
Yes.
It still looks challenging, doesn't it?
It does, and not only for the metal industry and the aggregate industry, but you see it with plumbers, electricians, anything that is a trade. You see help wanted signs. It's almost a given now. In every window, there's a help wanted sign, and I have customers say that even when they fill the position, they're going to keep that help wanted sign out there because they know in 4 months John's going to retire and they're going to need another person. So just keep the sign out. Don't ever take it down.
Yeah.
And it is now at the point where I feel, it might not be this many, but I feel like it's well over half of the companies we deliver to have help wanted signs, or they reach out to us. Hey, do you know anybody who needs a welding gig or a machining gig, or do you know a shear operator? We get asked a lot.
So we talked about a lot of things that you have to overcome. What would you say is the single biggest misconception out there about some of the trade careers? What's that number one thing that again you have to talk about, convince people that that's just not the way it is?
They don't make enough money.
Mm-hmm.
But that's one thing I always try to tell the children, because they always ask. That's one of the questions they ask me. How much money do you make? Well, I'm not telling you that. IMI takes really good care of me. However, it's not about how much money you make. It's about having, like you said, the smile on your face.
It is.
And feeling an accomplishment, that you can put your head on your pillow at night and sleep and know that, I don't have this big mansion. I don't have all these jets and all this stuff, but I have a nice, comfy, cozy house, and health. Health is a good thing. And I'm doing something I love. You have to do something you love. If you have to struggle to get out of bed every day, to go to that job, then it's not worth going to.
No matter how much they pay,
No.
it's not worth it.
No.
Because you're not fulfilled. You're
Exactly.
not happy as a person with that. You're just going through the motions essentially to get the check. And then honestly, a lot of times I tell kids, you think it's all grand when you're an adult and you'll have all this money, but you never have time to spend it. So it doesn't really matter. But if you're spending 12, 10 hours a day, 8 hours a day at your job, you've got to make sure you're happy with what you do, and that takes care of the soul. I worked a job for the city of Fishers, town of Fishers back then. I was a street laborer out of college. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I would have worked that job for 10 plus years. I loved it. I woke up every day. I went in. I was either paving a road, laying asphalt, unfortunately picking up roadkill and trash some days. But I did it with a smile on my face, and I loved the job. I worked there as a summer help in college, and then got out and kind of went 8 ways to Sunday, and then ended up back there and loved it, and actually worked there for quite a while with my bachelor's degree, picking up roadkill and paving roads. But it was fulfilling. I worked outside from 7 to 3 Monday through Friday. I had a great group of guys around me. It was a lot of fun. But I realized then that money was definitely not everything, but by and large that's what we get asked. Well, they don't make very much money. Well, an entry-level welder is going to start off around $60,000 for a certified welder. Not only that, there are lots of options out there. You can own your own weld shop. You can create the biggest welding facility in the state of Indiana if you're really motivated to do it. Major Tool, places like that, they had to start somewhere. And I tell people, just because you're a welder doesn't mean you can't be a welder / business owner, do marketing. There's a lot of opportunities. Don't just look at it as welding only. There's the small business side. There's a lot more to it than that. But the how much do you make question is asked a lot. And the benefit with welding is quite a bit, especially for a 20-year-old kid to maybe making $60,000 potentially after your 2-year apprenticeship. That's good money there's not many 20-year-olds with a 4-year degree that it can come out and make $60,000 a year. And not only that, as the situation gets more dire, they're going to be able to claim more benefits, time off, more pay. There's going to be a lot more that comes back to it. And I think in 10 years, people will definitely know that welding can pay very good money, not even to mention the machining side of it and all the other things that you can learn.
All right, as I feared, time flew very quickly here, so I think we got time for about one more question.
But we could talk all day about this, couldn't we?
Well, maybe we'll come back with part 2. How's that? I'll keep that in mind. But this is the one where cause you to go out on the limb maybe a little bit. If you were, each of you, if you were king or queen for a day, if you could do one thing to, money aside, whatever, if there was one thing that you would suggest, recommend that could be done to help overcome this challenge, is there anything that comes to mind there? What's that one thing that would really move this forward?
So
I'll go first.
it goes back to the parents. I wish I could set every parents of every middle school, junior high, and high school kid in one giant arena somewhere, and have people from the industry talk to them and show that you may be a doctor, but if your son wants to be a welder, there's great opportunity in that. And I just think that if you could really get people to listen and see the need from our perspective of the employment side of it and the stable career that your kids could have, if you could really clear out the earwax and get them to listen, I think that would be an amazing step forward.
And to jump on that, if I was queen for a day, to sit them down like that and talk about both of our industries, everything that you use, whether you're a doctor, you're an attorney, you're a teacher, you're whatever, you have to have these people to have your jobs, to be able to have all these things. Yeah. Without these people to do that, you're not gonna be able to do what you do. Mm-hmm. So I would think I would do that. Yeah. Excellent.
Mm-hmm. All right, Holly Ward, Jesse Johnson, thanks so much for joining us, for everything that you're doing and the passion you bring to your roles. Very much appreciated.
Thank you for having us.
Excellent. Enjoyed the conversation. And again, I'll emphasize as we wrap up, we're talking about providing opportunities, options, certainly whatever works best for individuals, whether it's that 4-year college, 2-year college, technical training, apprenticeships, different industries. The idea is having choices out there for people to make. This coincides with in a couple of weeks, the March-April issue of our Biz Voice magazine will be out, and we focus on outstanding talent. We look at a variety of programs, education, workforce efforts. We encourage you to check out the Biz Voice magazine. Be available online February 28th and also in the mail then. Our upcoming in March, we will have we'll look at the higher education side of the equation. We will have 3 consecutive episodes of the In Chamber with university presidents. We'll be talking to them about the challenges they see, the opportunities that are upcoming. Once again, remind you, the Indiana Chamber has a new training series called Boost. And this has a number of applications to individuals to upgrade their skills, areas such as team building, communicating with confidence, decision making, some of those skills that apply no matter what industry you're working in. So look forward at indianachamber.com. You can get full access to that Boost professional development training series. Once again, thanks for listening to the In Chamber. We'll be back with our next conversation in 2 weeks.